I do really well, but I can't stand what I do. I hate
Mm,
my job. And I
mm,
heard my brother in my head.
mm,
If you get up every day wondering why you have to do something, you're in the wrong thing. And that's at that point where I really like the tables started turning and the,
mm.
the self-talk started taking a different direction. I said, at least I took a path less traveled and it's working out. We're not there.
Welcome to Vulnerability Muscle, the empowering podcast challenging norms and guiding you to find strength and power through vulnerability. I'm your host, Reggie Ford. In a world that often portrays vulnerability as a sign of weakness, I believe it is a source of tremendous strength and authenticity. Through insightful conversations and thought provoking interviews, Vulnerability Muscle aims to redefine vulnerability and help listeners develop a new perspective on their own lives. Each episode of Vulnerability Muscle delves into a variety of topics such as mental health, social issues, and mindset shifts. We explore the power of vulnerability in healing, building resilience, and promoting personal growth, as well as fostering meaningful connections. This podcast provides practical tools and strategies to navigate life's challenges, overcome adversity, and create more inclusive and just environments for all people. Oh, Jim, welcome. How you doing, my brother?
Man, I'm doing well. Yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm trying to stay warm because we just got hit with some snow here. How much snow did y'all get? I mean, I'm sure you're right down the road, but do you know how many inches was the final?
I think like around here, it's been about 4 or 5 inches.
Okay. I've seen as high
Yeah,
as I think 8. I think Bell Me got hit with 8, so it's crazy. And the
I know.
crazy thing
It's
is,
8 inches up there. You'd never think that
yeah.
you'd get that much snow in Nashville in general, but it's forcing me to
No,
wear
seriously. It
these
Yeah.
types of hats, which screws up my hair. So,
And I've been wearing this sweatshirt for I don't know how long, so it's good. um, I want to start off by asking a couple questions, and feel free to be as vulnerable as you possibly can be or want to be, whatever's comfortable for you. But the first question: what is your biggest fear?
my biggest fear,
Mm-hmm.
man, coming out of the gate strong.
I know. I wanted to get you warmed up. I feel like you're a professional. You can handle it.
Man, I never thought about it. I don't really, I don't want to say I don't fear much, but I mean, I've always had a fear of returning to the place when I was 18, 19 years old, when my credit score was in the toilet. And I've worked hard since then to make my credit score a lot better than it was then. Because I mean, it was truly a learning experience. I'm glad I got it out of the way when I was 18 because it indeed lasted 7 years before things
Wow.
started. They started taking me seriously again. So
That's
that's
a
a big fear.
early,
I don't know if it's the
yeah.
biggest. You know?
A big fear works, and that's an early
Yeah.
lesson that you got. I'm
Oh
glad
yeah.
it happened that early for you as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And it's
Mm.
funny because I got my first credit card when I was 18. And it was like, the credit limit was like $600 or something, and I used it for gas and things of that nature. And my father just like he's like, "Yep, here it goes." I'm like, and that's about all the counsel I got.
I'm sure you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of people didn't understand what was going on with their credit as well. And I've seen some folks have to dig out of that hole. So, well,
This is
thank
a
you for
question
that.
that I'm sure as the episode goes on, I'll have other answers. They'll pop into my
Oh
head.
yeah, if you do, share them. But the next one is gonna be on the positive side. So, and I want to guess it, but I'm not. What is your superpower?
Um, let's see. I mean, being able to guide people in their podcast journey, as well as simplify the tip of the spear message of an effort, business or otherwise. I hear a lot of people get inside their own heads and they over explain what they do. I've just
Mm,
always had a gifting to be able to say, okay, so after hearing 5 minutes of you tell me what you do, this is what you do. And I sum it up
wow,
in, 10 words. Yeah, that's what I do. Okay, let's lead with
wow.
that. You know, that's a
All right,
superpower, I guess. Yeah.
No, that's a great superpower, and that's one that I think I can benefit from. That's one of the I just got off a call with a professional who is helping me do exactly that.
Right.
Taking all of these different pieces of my life, my experience, my career, my speaking, and putting that into something very succinct in my messaging. And so I might be hitting you up for that as well. And I'm sure
Sure.
we met. So a little background, we met. I hopped on your podcast not too long ago, maybe a couple months ago. And
Yes.
yeah, what's your problem is the name of the podcast.
It's actually been rebranded since then.
Okay, what is it now?
The Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast. A little bit more of a mouthful.
Mostly middle. Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
What's the reason behind one? I loved what's your problem, but tell me about how that podcast came to be.
I had an old general manager, boss, I guess, mentor of mine. We had lunch about 4 or 5 months ago. He's entering the business coaching space. And I've always been trying to get him on my podcast. And he always has a way to kind of look at me and go, so that's the thing. What came about? Why'd you go with that? He has that way about him. So he asked me, so the name of the podcast, what's up with that? So I'm like, here's the reason why I called it that. The gist of it kind of switched over time, and ultimately,
Mm,
what it really is mostly a business podcast for Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals.
okay.
The what's your problem angle was it's ambiguous if you look at it on the surface. Are we a
Mm-hmm.
psychiatry podcast or therapy? Or it could be misconstrued that way, but um, in this case, I felt like I would attract more bees to the hive with a more specific name of the podcast, and let's just say what it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. And I figured with all the people moving in to the state, people that are exploring the option of moving into the state, maybe they'll look around for podcasts and they're shopping around Middle Tennessee. It's right there in the name. Maybe we get some more bees to the
Yeah.
hive that way. So that's the strategy.
Wow, I like that. I like that. I think the approach that I took in naming this podcast, it shifted. So I knew vulnerability. I wanted that to be the topic of it, and I knew I wanted it to be kind of this redefining moment. But it was hard for me to come up with something that was brandable. I got a friend. He's like, it's not brandable. What you just said, nope. You have to explain too much of it. It's not brandable. And so
Right.
you can hear this in the first season of some of the language that I have. It was called Embracing Vulnerability before it got released. And so I had multiple episodes or all the episodes in the first season where we were under the brand Embracing Vulnerability. But between recording and releasing, vulnerability muscle just clicked. And I think it has the same, like it tells you what it's about. Um, but it is also a thing that can be branded. And so I'm curious when you made the switch. Well, one, when you had the first what's your problem, and then with the switch, how do you see that in the SEO space for searching your podcast? I know you mentioned like people are looking for Middle Tennessee or maybe looking for Middle Tennessee business. Uh how is it, I mean, how is it to get a domain name and all of that with the name so long?
That was, mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast.com is something that is the URL, and it's long, but I also truncated it to the acronym, if you will. So
Okay.
there's also mmtbp.com. So
Okay.
that's mostly the one that I brand that I say on the actual podcast when you're following along. And, as long as you make it as easy as possible and they hear things over and over again, MMTBP, it took me a while to kind of get it down, but now it's muscle memory.
Yeah.
That's like anything with repetition, frequency, typical like what I came out of radio, those radio advertising tenets. You hear something over and over and again enough, it'll stick. And to
Definitely.
me, a name is a name.
Hmm.
It's brandable or not. I mean, the brand of I think it's a better looking brand than what your problem was, and it speaks more to the heart of what we're doing. I was going to call it the Tennessee grind, and
Mm-hmm.
that conjures up a myriad of images. One being coffee, and so
Yeah.
several people I kind of researched with, highly trusted friends of mine who were going to shoot straight with me. I didn't want anybody just, yeah, that sounds good. I want your honest opinion. So three of them said, yeah, it sounds like a coffee podcast. I'm like, all right, that's fair enough. I said, what if I just called it the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast? And they're like, yeah, go with it. Okay.
Boom. There it is. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
love it. And it sounds like you said, like the radio background of it. Like you hear WPX, W this and that and that. And it's the same concept. We don't know what those W's and all those letters mean, but there is a meaning behind it, but you get attached and you associate it with those letters. Talk about how your background in radio, because when I came on a podcast, I saw you in action. It was like I felt like you were about to pull out some turntables and start mixing. Like you had it all down pat. You had every button pressed, and it was a production. It was a real production. I was impressed. But talk about your radio background and kind of how you got into that, and what you've learned from that.
Well, I mean, it started when I was around that time of 18, 19, getting out into the world. Went to college. Wasn't for me. But at the time I was getting in there, I played around at the radio station at the college campus. And it was always one of those things in the back of my mind that I knew it wouldn't exactly bring a ton of money home, but it was a fun job. And I tried a bunch of other things. I got out of college, didn't work out, and I ended up going into the trades with my dad. He had a business that he was kind of ramping down. He wanted to get retired. It wasn't my thing either, but it was a great skill to learn. That transitioned into an electrical job, which helps me a lot today. All of the skills that I learned when I was an electrical apprentice up in Connecticut, I still use today. I mean, they're valuable skills. But again, my brother once told me that if you get up every day wondering why you have to do what you're going to do again, it's not a good place to be. And that's where I was. I was
Wow.
getting up every day, 5:30 in the morning. I had to be at the job site by 7. It was either freezing cold or it was, spring and fall were nice, but summer and spring, winter time in Connecticut were just brutal. There was one job I went on during the summer where I pulled up to the site, and in my lunch igloo cooler. I had my sandwich, my lunch for the day, and 4 back then there were Poland Spring bottles. About then they were their medium sized selection. They were considerably sizable, and I had 4 of those. So here I was. I downed all 4 of them throughout the day, but didn't have to go to the bathroom once
Mm.
because it all
Wow.
came out through my skin. And that's when you're up on the ladder, you're drilling through, all sorts of stuff and getting wood chips in your hair on your sweaty. It was like, I always felt like at the time I needed to do something, like something was in me. There was something I was meant to do. I had to get it out of my system. And that is succumb to the fact that, well, hey, it might as well be radio because it may not pay the bills, but I can figure it out. And,
Mhm.
I went to a broadcast school in Connecticut, um, graduated. That got my foot in the door at the radio station. I say this publicly all the time. I got my teeth cut at the radio station I swore I'd never work for because it was the one that was in my backyard that we always listened to growing up. But hey, they gave me my shot, and it was a
Yeah.
springboard into Las Vegas. And Las Vegas was there for 4 years, honing my craft, getting around people that were better than me,
Mhm.
in Connecticut, I became a very big fish in a small pond. In Vegas, it was a 6 station cluster of notable stations that were written up in trade magazines and radio and records, and read about them in Rolling Stone. I mean, these were big, high profile radio stations, and I was a small fish in a big ocean. But man, in about a year and a half, I became very influential inside the building because I just loved what I did. I got up and every day I truly got up with a spring in my step. I understood the virtue of how important that is for what we do. And I ended up starting a side hustle with voiceover, which supplemented things. But I mean, we were paid mainly in experiences then, with all the exposure to celebrities and events and opportunities that we had. And then eventually, just my wife and I wanted to move back to the quote East Coast, but definitely not Connecticut because it gave us perspective. We were actually able to afford a house out there. We were able to create a life where we own something. And we knew the South would be another place to kind of do that in. And I always felt like I was a displaced Southerner anyway. So we wound up here in '05, and I started working for Mix 92.9 and Jack FM right around '05, and I was with them for about 9 years. So,
Wow.
and I just keep on. I have I still do radio, if you will, through podcasting, because that's the next
Yeah.
iteration of radio.
Absolute. Wow. That's a journey. That's an amazing journey of following your passion. I know I'm sure like early on, I'm sure it was very difficult to jump out there and do that, but you became that big fish, and I think we all desire in whatever we're doing to become, that big thing, but then to jump into Vegas, like how daunting of a place to be an entertainer of any sort. What was that transition like, and how did you experience any imposter syndrome or anything in that transition?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was me going from Market 289 in Danbury, Connecticut to Market 39. Now, a
Mm,
lot of, for those, the layman out there, market size in certain demographic market areas, like they call them DMAs, um, the higher, if you want to get paid better in broadcasting at the time, you had to ascend through the markets. So that was my next big step. From Vegas, I always knew I wanted to land in a major market, at least the first couple of years I was there. So it'd have to be a Dallas. I didn't want to move further west. So LA and San Francisco, those places were out. Getting back to the East Coast, it would have to be in Atlanta, Miami. Dallas I was good with as well. And I've had a couple of opportunities pop up there. But to answer your question, getting out there to begin with, I tell this story a lot where I think my wife and I were there a week. We found a place to live. I mean, talk about feeling displaced. We had to live about 4 or 5 days in a hotel on the strip
mm,
because they had trade. So there's nothing more displacing than having everything you own baking out under the hot sun in a moving truck, and you're living in a hotel.
wow.
And
Mm,
hey, I want to go work out. But in every hotel in Vegas, if you've ever been there, if you want to go somewhere in the hotel, either working out or maybe go get some sundries, you got to walk through the casino,
mhm.
and they force you to. So here I am in my workout clothes, first thing in the morning, walking through the casino, and people are like looking at you, going, "I'm going, all right, I'm just going to go back to my room." So, we ended up getting our own apartment. Finally, we started the move-in process. It was our first time ever being west of the Mississippi from where we lived, and 2,000 miles away from anything we've ever known. Um, and I said, my wife was just sorting through the boxes. I was at work. We had a pizza place across from the radio station. I said, "Hey, I'll get us a pizza and I'll bring it home for lunch." I go there, order a $25 10-inch California, quote, pizza that was like bare basics for $25. I'm going, what the crap is this? And while I was waiting for it, I noticed on the menus that they have by the cash register, all the locations of this place were either in California, Arizona, or Nevada. And I was going,
Mm,
wow, that hit me. I was going, I am really out of my element here. What have I done?
yeah, yeah,
But man, it was very uneasy. But you
definitely.
spend enough time, you stick it out, and you make good friends, and you become part of the mesh. And as long as you kind of share that same passion everybody else had, and radio is a passion driven industry,
Mhm,
everybody clicked, and it was a really good hive mind for creativity, if that makes sense.
mm,
It really
I like that.
stretched me.
Oh, I like that hive mind for creativity. When you're chasing a passion,
Yeah.
especially one like radio, right? At certain levels, it may not be as lucrative. And at 18, you were dealing with the credit score and having to figure out finances. How did you and your wife? How did y'all get through those moments, and what kept the passion going as opposed to I'm going back to finding something safe, finding something that I know is going to be reliable.
Well, I mean, that followed me till I was about 25, 26. My in-laws were really generous by signing on and helping us out with our first house and co-signing for it. There's nothing more humiliating than having to write a letter to the bank, the mortgage company, explaining what happened in those years with my credit discrepancies, and having everybody see it. So, even including your
Mm.
in laws, like, here we are, 2 or 3 years married, not even that, maybe about a year married at that point. And them kind of, giving those looks to my wife going, are you sure you made the right decision? you know,
Yeah.
that was something. I mean, that was
Wow.
once upon a time, even when my wife and I were dating, we went to a cell phone store in Connecticut, and I'm like, hey, I'll get a cell phone, and they pulled credit back then. I don't know if they still do. Maybe they do. And because of my credit, she got a brand new phone and was signed up, and I got declined. It was mortifying, you know.
Wow.
But that house really changed things. I bought my first car on my own at age 26, although my wife was upset that I didn't put her on the deal. I said, "But hey, look at it this way. I was able to finance a car at a decent interest rate, and it's on my own. So
Hmm.
cool. We're
Yeah,
moving in the
that's
right
a win.
direction."
That's a win for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. So much to be gained through that experience. Do you have any advice for someone out there who is at that age or at that space in their career where they are wanting to give up, wanting to turn back, wanting to do something different and leave that passion behind? Any advice to that person?
My business partner talks about this kind of a scenario a lot, and I have to agree with him. Sometimes when you're overwhelmed, when you're having one of those days, I mean, the impetus of the What's Your Problem podcast was the it's always something factor. As long as you accept that on some level every day, it's going to be something. Something's not going to go right. It could be small, a little bit of an annoyance, could be big, you know. Last Friday, I get home and I got a letter from the IRS. That used to scare the crap out of me. But now it's kind of,
True.
not that it happens on a regular basis. It's like, oh, that's great. Perfect timing, guys, right before the weekend for crying out loud. Just do the next thing, just
Hmm.
calm yourself, take a moment, take 5 minutes, you think about the situation. If the next thing is writing a list, and there's your next thing, write a list of things you need to do. Just, as
Yeah.
long as they're small, because sometimes just, and there's another part of this. Sometimes just getting through and figuring out what to do, as long as you come away from the day with an accomplishment, as small as it might be, that'll help you.
Yeah.
Um, the other aspect of this is when uh, when you're feeling like that, then maybe it's time for you to take a mental break and help somebody else. You know,
Ooh.
all of us have had those moments, and I've been really taking them seriously as of late. You have somebody pop into your head randomly,
Yeah.
that means you should probably reach out and check on them.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's been happening. The more I do it, the more it happens to me. Someone will pop into my head, and I'll shoot them a text. Hey, man, thinking of you. Hope you're okay. You know, just wanted to let you know you're being thought of. And for that person, that
Wow.
might be the difference of a whole bunch of things, a lot of weight. And for
Mhm.
you, it gets the attention off of your situation. Who can I
Mhm.
help?
Yeah.
You know, when in
Wow.
doubt, serve.
When in doubt, serve. I love that. I love that so much. And in the first point of just do the next thing. I was listening to Ryan Leaf speak a couple years ago, and he's considered probably one of the greatest NFL busts of all time, which is a
Mm.
hard title to carry. And he's had his struggles since the NFL and speaks openly about those. And I think one of the things that I took away from his talk was similar to what you just said about do the next thing right, and as small as it may be. And so, like even if it's like I have a tissue, I have a piece of paper, and I'm shooting it into the basket. If I miss it, go pick up that piece of paper, put it in the basket. That's the next thing that you can do right at that moment. And when you said writing down like a list, I find myself when I'm like anxious as can be, and I have all these different thoughts, I have all these different ideas, and I want to get a lot done, but I'm getting nothing done because I'm trying to do too much. If I sit down and just write the things out, how much peace that brings me and how much more productive I am on the other side of that. And so I think that is a fantastic piece of advice for everyone, really. Just being able to break it down into smaller things. Like it doesn't have to be this
Yeah.
grand thing. In fact, I think when I have a something on my to do list for 2 weeks or longer, I break it down into something smaller. So let's say it's write a blog post, and that's on, on there for 2 weeks, and I don't write it. Make an outline for a blog post, then write the first paragraph, like something where it's broken down into a smaller, more accomplishable task, because obviously that
Oh
task
yeah.
that I wrote down was too big. So I love that. I love that so much. Um,
I always tell people that, a lot of big ideas seem like climbing Mount Everest, but you forget that Everest is just taken one step at a time.
yeah,
Literally,
one
just
step.
get to the next step.
Yes, yes, one step at a time. Man, that's beautiful.
Thank
One
you.
thing I truly appreciate about you is your level of authenticity that you bring to your work as a podcaster, as the radio personality that you are, and as a voiceover actor. What has authenticity meant to you in your career through all of this being in front of the public eye, maybe not visually, but with your voice? What has authenticity meant to you?
Well, with the voiceover, like in terms of that
And yeah, in your voiceover, or even just how you portray yourself
in
via
general,
radio, via podcasts. Yeah, I think you show up so authentically you, and it's something that I think may be hard for a lot of people. So how has that been a source of significance or pride for you?
I've never been, dare I say, vain. Um, I show up, I look presentable generally. I know I'm overweight. I know all these things. Um, there are people out there that, shame other people for the way I would look, I think there are people out there today that are being controversial for the sake of being controversial.
Yep, very
I've
true.
been around the block enough to know that life is just, you got to do the best you can. And I put that out there all the time. And what you see is what you get. I freely admit that I am a guy 7 years into building, another phase of a business. We still haven't gotten the plane off the ground. And I freely admit that. I'm not going to pretend that it's anything else. Uh, that's the realness that I want to project because it's easy to defend. When you're telling the truth and you know it's the truth, it's easy to defend when you're questioned about it. Well,
Yeah.
this is just where I am. It's factual. We're moving in a forward direction. We're taking the next step. I'm not going to tell you that I drive Lambos or I've got money on a bed and rent these apartments that overlook an ocean and a beach and tell you that it's. I'm not going to because people. I've always been of the school of thought, especially formative years being in the 90s where authenticity was really starting to become a buzzword, and then it took hold in the 2000s, early millennium. Um, all you can be is real because otherwise
Hmm.
people are gonna know. I don't care how hard you try. I don't care if you want to be the loudest person in the room, which a lot of these people tout. Well, if you want to make a difference, you want to get people's attention, you got to be the loudest person in the room. I see that being practiced right now with certain people. They're trying to be the loudest people in the room and show up constantly. They're getting no engagement. I'm not here to tell you that I'm getting tons of engagement because I'm not. On certain
Hmm.
platforms, I am. On others, I'm not. I freely tell people that, hey, once upon a time, I bought my Instagram followers. Not many
Hmm.
people admit that. I know people who
Hmm.
did, and they've got hundreds of
Hmm.
thousands of quote followers that will
Yeah.
never admit that. I know for a
Yeah.
fact that they did because it's a vanity thing.
Yeah.
Screw your vanity. At the end of the day, it's a legacy play, man. It's did you just shoot straight? Tell people what you think, with tact and strategy. Because at the end of your life, you want to be remembered for being integrous, not for being transactional and trying to take
Mhm.
people's money.
Mhm.
Um, I see a lot of that as well. I'm just going to be the loudest person in the room because I want to sell a course. I want to sell, coaching. And it's a one and done type of thing. I'm just going to take your money, and when you're done, I'm going to gaslight you into thinking it's your fault that you failed, and I'll move on. And you just weren't good
Yeah.
enough. Um,
Wow.
and it's that this. I sometimes I wonder, guys, do you even believe what you're saying?
I think about that a
And
lot.
it's an annoying thing for me. It really does rub me the wrong way. But what's annoying to me is that when I put stuff out there that is shooting from the hip, that is truthful, it gets crickets. So
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
algorithms
Yeah.
love vanity,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I was gonna say earlier about just like the engagement and even the followers and everything is you can't control the algorithm. You can have the best content out there, and if organically the algorithm's not gonna push it to somebody, they're just not gonna see it. They might not follow. And then I think vanity plays a role on the other side too of people who decide to follow you or not. Right? Like you can
Right.
go to a page and just simply because it has an M beside the number 1 million followers, you may follow it without even diving deep into the content or what's there. Whereas somebody who has 40 followers may have the best content out, and you're not going to follow them because it doesn't seem cool to do so. Um, and yeah,
Well, you look on
it's
even on
crazy.
LinkedIn. There are people that I know who are posting, and I'm looking through it right now. There's people that I know uh, who have a lot to offer and a lot of stripes in what they do. They've got longevity, uh, foundational principles that have made them successful in their area. And they put stuff up that's like, man, nobody's saying this stuff. And it's like crickets. And then you go to these other people that as long as you post a selfie that looks highly posed and completely phony,
Right.
talking about the same old crap in every single post, retelling the same old stories, not really offering any iota of value other than to, tease you into what the next step is. Those are the ones that get the exposure.
Yep.
And they build these, look at what I've done to build.
Yep.
No, what you've done is you're good looking. Okay. I don't know what you do. I mean, literally, I watch these people, these heavyweights on LinkedIn. I have no idea what you do. Well, I've built this, $50 million. Okay, prove it. Show me your
Right.
financials. I think that should be a
Right.
requirement. If you're going to make
Yeah.
that kind of a
Yeah.
bold claim, then you are responsible to substantiate it.
True. True.
I
I
am,
have a
the top 20 speaker. Oh, really? According to who? When did
yeah.
this
I
happen? Why did nobody
I've
tell
seen
me?
I've seen that. I've seen that with I think even training programs that yeah, I've done a couple of some trainings around speaking and the business behind it and everything, and some will actually get on there and tell people to make it up, to just make it up and say present all of these different accolades and things in a way to sell yourself, but that's just not authentic. And like you said, it'll get sniffed out. If you
People are
claim
going
to
to
be
know.
the best this, that, and this, and you get on stage or you do whatever it is that you're saying you do well, and you are terrible at it, it's gonna be more harmful than good in the long run. And so
And
I've
that's,
been one
yeah.
I've been one to more so downplay a lot of the things that I am or believe that I am or have accomplished before I put the I'm the best this out there. It doesn't even make sense to me. Like even as a like best selling author was hard for me to say that because I know that those terms can come out and of I could sell one copy of a book. I know how to do this. Sell one copy of a book. Amazon's gonna rank it as a bestseller, and I'm technically a best-selling author, but it means absolutely nothing. And so what for me, it came a time to where there was a certain number of book sales that I was like, even though I've already accomplished best-selling author in some very respectable categories, when I get this number of book sales, that's when I will call myself that. And it took longer than when I was actually a best-selling author before that happened. So
I mean, that's an integrous standpoint. Um,
Yeah.
I remember, being when I was in the radio industry, fighting off the other radio stations when we knew for a fact that we were the number one talk station in Las Vegas, and we were. It was us and a handful of other stations, mostly on the AM dial. But we were for sure the number one. And then we'd hear one of our competitors say, well, we're the number one. Well, okay, substantiate it. What are you talking about? We've got the
Hmm.
Arbitron book right here. Now
Hmm.
you're number one in, uh, you know, adults 35 to 44 from 9 to noon on Saturday. So yeah, I guess you can say you're the number one talk station in that genre, in that
Yeah.
time slot. And that's how they
Right.
would spin it. That's
Yep.
how they would spin it. We got a
Yep.
competitor with the lighting industry here because one of the businesses I run or I'm partner in is a lighting company that produces full color lighting shows for car washes and other commercial facilities, jump parks, things of that nature. And we've got a competitor that says all their stuff's made in the USA. And I'm like, no, it isn't. You're
Yeah.
lying.
Yeah. Right. Wow.
Substantiate that. Because I know for a fact all LED material is sourced and manufactured in China. There's no way around it.
Gosh.
They own all the rare earth metals when it comes to LED technology. And that's one of the candor things that we put out there. No, we're not made in the USA. Just admit it. Furthering that, even in the
Hmm.
car business,
Yeah.
after I got out of radio, I went into the car business for a season. They
Hmm.
would quote, load your lips with what to say to the customer. And as a 38-year-old
Hmm.
man, 37 at the time, I had been around the block in life to know enough that I'm not comfortable saying the things you're telling me to say because I need to have the integrity and the peace of mind to put my head down on a pillow at night. And if I'm lying to these people like you want me to do, I can't do that. So I would have to learn the fundamentals of selling, but find my voice. And then it was amazing when you just shot straight with people, how the defenses came down. Well, hey, this
Yep.
doc fee is, extra profit. I would go, yeah, it is. And they'd be
Yep.
shocked. Wow. I said, yeah,
Man told me the
sometimes
truth.
sometimes the cars don't make as much money as you think.
Yeah.
And the doc fee is there to make sure the people that do the paperwork, get your licensing, all your plates and tags, registration process, that there's some money to make sure they're being paid. Cause yeah, sometimes the new cars don't make that much money where you're knocking 10 to
Hmm.
15% off of them like we are. It knocks out a lot of the profit as much as you don't think it
Hmm.
is. Well, how much, what am I going to get for financing? And one dealership, they promise them, 0.99%. I'm like, but we don't know that. Have we pulled
Yeah.
their credit? No, just tell them that. No,
Yeah.
no.
I cannot stand that. I can't stand being sold to, and I don't truly like
Right.
selling. Like I want it, if I have to sell something, I'm gonna sell it from a standpoint of like I truly believe in this. Like this works
Yeah.
and it works this way, and the value that you're paying for it is it's worth that or more. I don't want to
Right.
take advantage of anyone when it comes to selling something. Like
You will find
crazy.
out exactly the person you are if you get into the car business. I mean, because there are really two types of people out there. There are transactional people, there are relational people. I knew that it would take longer to build a business base by being relational. Now I could be transactional, but I had to do it with integrity. Hey, I'm
Hmm.
going to try and close you. I would tell them, after the fourth no, I typically get a yes. So don't be surprised if I ask you over and over again if you want to buy the car. It would elicit a laugh. It would loosen things up. But the way I said it, the way I,
Yeah.
found my voice, it was able to just disarm them generally, 90% of the time. Of course, you're going to have
Hmm.
your people that were completely standoffish no matter what. But I would just try and, use humor as my ally and my tool to disarm them, to bring the wall down. But at the end of a transaction, I just, not that I had a meeting out of my hand, it was just they trusted you. And by that time, you could ask for the second money, which was, hey, when you go into finance, they're going to offer you a whole bunch of other things, as I'm sure you know. Here are the three items that I get behind. I love the fact that I have extended warranty. I can do prepaid maintenance. And man, on a Mercedes Benz, those tires and wheels, they do cost a fortune. So if it works well within the bandwidth of your payment, I would strongly consider moving forward on these. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? Yes. Okay. Can I get
Boom.
you a water, soda, while we're waiting?
Yeah.
it was as simple as that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You
It
just
wasn't
reminded
rocket
me.
surgery.
You're you just I love that. You just reminded me of I see I'm a sucker for the dad jokes. Remember when when I was on your podcast? I will laugh at them all day long.
Oh, yeah.
Rocket surgery is not a thing, y'all. Um what I was gonna say is you reminded me of an experience that I just had recently where I went to a resort to get away from some of this cold weather. And right after you check into the hotel or into the resort, there is a group that comes up to you and is like, "Hey, we're gonna offer you, this money, or this, you can spend it on whatever, but we want to just show you around our other resort." And I've never had anybody come up to me and do that, and so I was like, "Oh yeah, let's do it." And so I get there and I go to the other resort, me and my wife, and there's a 3 hour walk around this resort. They give us lunch, and then there's a presentation where it's all sales and selling hard on how to get you to sign up for this membership to keep you coming to our resorts for every vacation of your life for the next 60 years or whatever it was. And it was just the total opposite of what I how I like to go about, being approached about anything. And so I was the customer that was absolutely no, absolutely standoffish the entire time. But I think one, just as a bit of advice to anybody who hasn't had that experience, it may come if you go to a resort and you see somebody coming up and it sounds too good to be true. Just I mean, know that you're going to be in an uncomfortable situation for hours. It felt like being a hostage, and it wasn't genuine, it wasn't authentic. It was the main person that was guiding us around, shout out to Mario. He was a very genuine guy, but the rest of the people that were a part of his team were just so off-putting, that whole experience. And I will never sit through one of those. I don't even care how much money they offer or how many nights they offer. It wasn't it didn't feel good at all.
Those are high pressure, very transactional types of approaches, and they'll do everything they can to try and close you. We had that
Oh yeah.
same experience in 2016. We were able to take our kids and family to Disney for the first time, and you had to sit through the 3 hour presentation and see the properties and all that stuff. And I'm like, dude, I just got out of the car business. I know exactly all your
Yeah.
tactics. You're not going to sell me
Hmm.
anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. So let's just wrap it up. You
Wrap
know?
it up. That's what I was saying. I was
Yeah.
like, listen, I signed up for an hour and a half. We've been here for 3 hours. I gotta go.
Right.
That you can offer me all the champagne. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing any of that. But yeah, it was highly annoying. So
Yeah.
the thing that really got me, we left and we were like, they went from that whole package being $70,000 to being so desperate to make a sale that we got them down to $10,000,
Yeah.
which I'm like, so you were just gonna rip me off at the beginning, and
Yeah.
but even still, no sell, no sell for you today.
That's what
So
I call signaling. Yeah.
yeah, but but I want to hear because I feel like you're a man of true wisdom, and your wisdom from your your car selling days. You told me a story when I was on your podcast about someone coming to you and I guess empowering you in a way that you hadn't seen in yourself, in seeing yourself, um and what you were able to do, what your potential was. Can you speak to that
Yeah.
story and talk about what you learned through that?
Yeah, there was I don't know what that phenomenon is called because it just happened to my business partner recently too. It's similar to where, if you're married, if you have a girlfriend or boyfriend or anything, your spouse or your significant other, you try and tell them that they're beautiful, right? And of course you got to tell me that you're with me. But it isn't until they're at the grocery store and someone comes up to them and asks them out for a coffee or something that they get all kerfluffled. I want to say it's called cognitive bias,
Mm,
but I could be wrong. That is essentially what happened here. I was at the Honda dealership where I started in the car business. Thought I was always just destined to sell that brand because I knew the demographic. I've owned several Hondas. I understood it. We owned, as a dealership group, we owned other Highline brands. We had Porsche, BMW, Mercedes. Um, I think that was about it. I wouldn't exactly qualify Mini as luxury, but they were part of the BMW family. But anyway, um, I had this one customer, and every time I would walk into like the BMW store, it was intimidating. It just felt like these people were cut from a different cloth, and I felt like an imposter being
Mm.
in the actual dealership, even though I worked for the same company. And of course, walking into a dealership like that, I would always tell myself, "Oh my gosh, there's no way I'll ever be able to afford a car like this." You know, strike two. And I had this one customer at Honda who was in the car business himself once upon a time. And we took out a Honda Accord. He just wanted a simple car to drive around, daily driver. And he says, you really need to be selling Highline. Okay, never really saw myself in that kind of a role, but what makes you say that? He says, I've dealt with a lot of car salespeople over the years. You're different. There's a way that you present yourself, and you're best suited in a Highline dealership. I said, so like a Lexus, he goes, exactly. I said, I don't know. I just never, he's like, you can totally do it. You need to believe that. And I don't know you from Adam. I barely, we've known each other for maybe a half an hour so far, but you need to look into that. And that was it. I mean,
Mm.
my mother, my father, my brother, my wife could tell me to their blue in the face, oh yeah, you could totally do it. I would never, not that I wouldn't believe them. It's just that you have that bias of, well, you have to say that. Of
Mhm.
course you think I can because you're with me. Um, but because a total stranger told me that, you know what? I'm going to take you up on it. I'll accept the challenge. And lo and behold, we had a position open at the Mercedes dealership, which was in the same group. I put in for a transfer in the middle of the month. And getting back to the whole notion of the next thing,
Mhm.
here I was leaving in the middle of the month, which is something you just don't do looking back on it because you want to finish out your month and make your paycheck. But I figured, well, I might as well jump now, start the year fresh, get my training and all the things because they wouldn't let you take a customer until you did a certain amount of training. And with Honda being not myopic, but a narrow scope of product offering to a Mercedes, where it's like, my goodness, everywhere you look was options. You
Yeah.
know, you had to learn all the different class of cars and the engines, not necessarily the intricacies like the horsepowers and torque and stuff like that. But I really got into the story of the brand. But getting back, I'm getting off track here. The first thing was to get past all my testing and start by the end of the month, at least start taking 5 to 10 ups. And I knew I wanted to sell my first car, dare I say, pop my cherry, by the end of the month. That was what it was called. It was almost like a celebratory thing. Every time a month would start, I would call my wife or text her and be like, "Hey, got my cherry for the month," and
Mhm.
as crude as it sounds, but
Yeah.
those were the things to be done. And even though I was a true, like, again, it was Vegas all over again,
Mhm.
fish out of water. I was around all these people that had been there for years, and I was the new guy. It's never fun being
Mhm.
a new guy.
Mhm.
And, even, I would, just to kind of get familiar with the cars, I would offer myself to the other salespeople. Hey, if you need me to go take a customer's car that you're about to deliver, to get gassed up or take back the detail, give me the keys. I'll handle it for you. Just to kind of build goodwill with people, but also be a servant, and also to get myself familiarized with the cars. And in turn, they would actually help me out. Hey, what does this mean when the triangle comes up on the mirror? And little nuances of the cars that were kind of neat. Every trunk space in a Mercedes has got to accommodate a full set of golf clubs. I had no idea.
Wow.
Those type. Yeah, it's little interesting nuances that they design nuances they would put into these cars that I could then tell my clients. Isn't that cool? Just
Mhm.
I just found this out. I'm new here. That was the biggest
Yeah.
tool I had is telling I'm new. But then those were just a culmination of next things that I had to use in that vulnerable state that I was in. Because
Mhm.
I was starting all over again after, getting out of a business where I dominated. I was the man in radio. And then
Mhm.
I got out of it and I had to start. I was a fish out of water. My gosh. It was not a fun time. 3 to
Yeah.
4 months of being in a car dealership, not sure if I made the right decision. Am I really good at this? I'm 37 years old. What am I doing? I've got stuff on the line. I got a mortgage to pay for. I've got, 4 dependents. I've got insurances. I've got a car. It's like everything could just go to crap.
Mhm.
And then here I am, 6 months after going through all of that, doing it again in a
Mm.
different dealership.
Yeah.
You wanna talk about just man, but I just
Stressful.
I had the confidence and surety to say, "No, I'm just gonna make this work." It
Yeah.
has to.
It
It
has
has
to.
to,
I
you
think
know?
I hate that we have that we can look up the term, and if you know the term, tell us the term, but cognitive bias or whatever it
Yeah,
is, I hate that we have that. We possess that we possess negativity bias and we see things from a negative standpoint. And often are more critical of ourselves than anybody else.
yeah,
And I think I've possessed that the critical aspect of looking at myself so much throughout my life. And so and I feel I know where it comes from. Of I always say, like, if there's a record playing in the back of my head, and it's voices, it's certain people in my life, whether it be my mom, or whether it be somebody from, when I was younger, telling me something that has just stuck, and that became a belief, a core belief. Do you think
yeah.
any of that has played a role in your life? And how have you overcome it?
One of the things that was told to me over and over again in my formative high school years was, if you don't go to college and get your degree, you're not gonna amount to much of life.
Mm,
Even going to the trade school, which was the other option where we grew up, was called Henry Abbott Technical Vocational School, and you learned all the trades, plumbing, things of that nature, electrical. The kids that went there were, I mean, I remember I was guilty of it, looking down on them. Oh, you couldn't
mm,
hack it in high school, so you've got to go to Henry Abbott Tech and and learn how to be a printer or something like that, and learn a trade because you're not destined for the white collar jobs like we are. And that
yeah.
was, the hard lesson in that was just carrying that around, being a blue collar worker even after high school, uh, in a sea of, here I am in the Northeast, one of the most affluent counties in the country, if not the world, Westchester County, New York, where everybody's white collar. And if you were coming in to, fix their phone system or put in a wall plug or an outlet or a switcher or a light or something like that, I mean, you were looked down upon. It was like you were a servant. Occasionally, I understood that my natural way about me, the way I would do things and talk to people, kind of won them over. But at first, it was like, servant over here, come. This is
Mm,
where you're going to have to, work for us, that kind of thing.
mm,
It was a reality, and that lived with me, even getting into radio, because well, I'll never make $100,000 a year, or I'll never have financial success because I never went to college. I don't have that degree. And it was one time my brother-in-law married a girl I went to high school with. We were in the same grade. She was of a different hangout group. She was more preppy. I was more of the burnout. I had a mullet. I had a long trench coat. I had this, hung out with all the smokers, listened to Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax and all that, and just not cool. I was cool in my own circle, but not to the rest of the cool school,
yeah.
school cool. And it's funny because in senior year, I understand I became more of a overlapper into other groups, and I understood the nuance of that back then, and I take that with me now. But anyway,
Hmm.
um, she married my brother-in-law, and by proxy, we were reunited. My wife and I were still living in Las Vegas. We visited for Christmas time back in Connecticut to her family, and this girl Megan, who was engaged to my brother-in-law at the time, was having like a get together at her apartment. Now, all these people have gone to college; they've all graduated. They, on the surface, seem to be doing very well. Um, and we went to this event, this get together she was having with all these people that I hadn't seen in 10 years at the time, and it was like a high school reunion on a micro scale. And the class president Great guy. I knew even when I knew him in high school, he was just a good human being. I saw him. Didn't really know each other in high school. We knew of each other. We were acquainted, but I saw him. He saw me at this event. We get talking. Hey, how have you been? It's been a long time. What you doing? He asked me what I do. I said, I live in Vegas. I work for CBS Radio out there, Infinity Radio at the time. Money's not all that great, but man, I love getting up in the morning. It's a lot of fun.
Mm,
It's a fun life, very rich with experience, and we'll see where it goes. I had the confidence to say that, and he just looked at me and he goes, "I would love to just love what I do."
dang.
And I
Wow.
and I was one of those moments that I always remember, a bookmark moment where I go, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I do really well, but I can't stand what I do. I hate
Mm,
my job." And I
mm,
heard my brother in my head.
mm,
If you get up every day wondering why you have to do something, you're in the wrong thing. And it's at that point where I really like the tables started turning and the,
mm.
the self talk started taking a different direction. I said, at least I took a path less traveled and it's working out. We're not there. Um, Fast forward to when I was in the Mercedes dealership, I had a customer, another memorable bookmark life moment, who she and I we got along fabulously, but here I was again in another business that was kind of like trending down.
Mhm.
Um, and I was 37, 38 at the time. And she was just one of these people that she brought her car back in after I sold she and her husband a car. So it was a two-car sale. And she brought it back in to have some things and done to it. So while that was happening, we were just, shooting the breeze. And all of a sudden I got vulnerable with her, buddy. And she was just easy to talk to. And I said, here I am. I'm pushing 40. And we all tell ourselves when we're 18, by the time we're 40, we're going to have, $250,000 in the bank. We're going to have all these stuff going on and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I've got nothing.
Mm,
I know, I said, we were able to keep my wife home with the kids and make sure that she was there for them. I said, but I've worked all my life up until now. I've got nothing in the bank to show for it. And she stopped me dead in my tracks by saying this. She says, man, you are so hard on yourself. And I was like, it was like a punch to, shot between the eyes.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Why do you say that?
Yeah.
You have everything.
Mm,
You just don't realize it. All of
mm,
your wealth, all of this, the stuff you realize you can make up for that. But your time with your kids, the how you're pouring into them, the presence that you're showing them in their formative years, being children, they're not being raised by somebody else. The mother's there with them, as it should be. And you can't take that away from them. They're always going to have that.
yeah.
And I said, thank you. I
Wow.
really needed to hear that. That was a life-changing moment,
Wow.
you know?
I got chills just hearing that. That's gonna be something that I feel whoever's listening to this, like, I hope you grasp that because I mean, at any age, at whatever age, if your life can be fulfilled with certain things that you can take away and say that, I find success in that. I find success in not only the monetary, but the way that I show up in the world, the way that I am perceived by other people, the way that I genuinely serve and care for others. Like that is true success to me, and I love that you had that experience and those eye-opening moments to be able to see the greatness that is within you. uh i'm i'm
Yeah.
i'm I'm proud of you. I'm
Thank you.
extremely proud of you. You've done some fantastic thing, and I looked at your website and it has a lot of awards. So y'all get a chance, I'm gonna drop the link to the website, but just go through and see some of the amazing things that Jim does. uh, uh I want to go through a couple more of those questions, kind of how I rattled them off in the beginning.
Yeah,
um and you just give me whatever is on your mind. So the first
sure.
one, what comes to mind when you hear the word vulnerability?
It's not a bad thing. Embrace it.
Embrace vulnerability.
Mhm.
If you can have a conversation with anyone living or dead, who would it be and why?
Christ Jesus.
Mm,
Even though we should be doing that on a daily basis anyway through prayer, which is I fail at. Um,
you're so hard on yourself.
I know. I see what you did there. Um, other than that, I'm trying to think of anybody else. I always thought, and I've reached out to him before. I've always wanted to have a conversation with Barack Obama.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
he'd be a cool dude to
Oh
talk to,
my
man.
gosh, yes. So, we're friends, and I'm gonna send you his. No, I'm kidding, but uh, that would be one. I would love to have a conversation with Barack. I sent him a copy of my book when it came out, and was like, fingers crossed. His agent, or I
Yeah,
guess agent or publicist, somebody responded to
yeah.
me, which I felt like that was really genuine. But I never heard anything about that. So,
And mind you, I never voted for him.
hmm,
So, I mean, and it's not, I wouldn't want to talk politics with him. I just think it would be a cool guy to talk to. He always just seemed like, he had the beer summit in the first early part of his candidacy and or his administration. And I was like, that's cool, man.
yeah,
Credit to him.
yeah,
Credit to
definitely,
him.
definitely. This is a question. So I just added this question because one of the I sent out a poll on social media, and it was like, what is one of the hardest things to say? Thank you, I'm sorry, I love you, whatever. And the overwhelming response was, I need help. Was the hardest
Really?
thing for people to say. And
I would
so
think it would
with
be, I'm sorry.
maybe that's Jim's answer, but
Maybe.
with that, with all the things that you have going on, what is something that you need help with right now?
Um, just, trying to understand the ever changing world of algorithms. I know I have something to say. I guess I'm just not doing it right. Um, it was told to me the other day on my YouTube channel, oh my gosh, you got to be doing this. You got to change this. And I'm like, okay, what do you charge?
Yeah.
Because I'm at a point in my life I can't take it. I can't spin any more plates.
Right,
Um,
right.
and I don't really want to spend my time understanding that kind of thing. I have better things to spend my time on. So, the vulnerability aspect of any CEO, business owner is understanding what you're not good at.
Mm.
That's a superpower, buddy, right
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
Um, Not knowing what you're good at and getting the people around you that are, that can fill in those gaps.
Yeah.
Um, Another superpower, and getting back to that question, is being an encourager to the person you used to be.
Mm.
You know, anytime you come across somebody who's been or is in the place where you were, you're obligated to help them out and encourage them
Mhm.
because you know what it's like.
Yes. Oh my
So,
god. I love that.
offshoot, sorry.
I love that. No, I absolutely love that. And it's going to lead into this next question that is about a person that you used to be. What is one of your favorite childhood memories?
Oh, man. It's funny. It was just reminded me of there's so many of them. It's a hard question to answer, but as of late, and it was just reminded me, my wife brought it up. She says, remember when you used to sit in the backyard with the kids with the garden hose and the sprayer, and you used to ask them questions, and if they got it wrong, they would get sprayed? I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot that. And then I remind my daughter, who's 17 right now, and she said something. I said, remember in the backyard we used to take, she's like, the hose and used to ask us the questions. Like, I love that game. And it just warmed my heart. That was this week that happened. I was like, oh man, that's cool. Because at the time, you have no idea if, I was just trying to fill time because my wife was working on the weekends. My kids were small. It's kind of a drag because you're the dad and, you don't know what to do with the kids, but you're just trying to make up stuff as you go along. So I came up with this game of it was a hot summer day. We didn't have any kiddie pools or anything like that, so hey, let's get the sprinkler out, and it's like, yeah, let's do that. But as an adult, you're like, oh, it's a sprinkler, you got to set it up and get the freaking hose, and
Mhm.
there's grass clippings that get on their feet, so I would instead, I'm like, how can I just sit in the chair and entertain them? So I would just grab the sprayer and I'm going to ask you three questions. If you get the answer wrong, I'm spraying you. And even if they got it right, I would spray them. And they ate it up. They loved it. I forgot about that until my wife reminded me. That's a great memory.
Wow, that's
That's a really good
beautiful.
memory.
That's
Thank you.
beautiful. I'm gonna dig deeper because I want an under 18 gym
Oh,
before
okay.
that credit card debt, before or the credit issue. a memory from your childhood that you find that is very fond?
Being that I lost my dad in '06, and
Mm,
anything I remember the man he was when we were growing up. He was always cognizant to tell my brother and I that he loved us, and he wasn't afraid to tell us. And as kids, when you're growing up hearing that, you're going, okay, it's of course you're our dad. But as you get older, you realize that that didn't happen to him. Um, so I
mhm.
guess he made a point in his life to, well, when I have kids, I'm going to tell them, and they're going to know that their dad loves them, and would show us affection and would love on us and stuff like that. One of the ways he would do that was with fishing. So he was a huge fisherman, had the toys, had the RV, the boat he would tow behind the RV, and numerous fishing trips I would go, just he and I. And one of those things that indelibly sticks in my mind is whenever I hear the Beach Boys, because one of the memories was every time we'd go out 30 miles offshore in the Atlantic Ocean and go trolling, we would play the Beach Boys, just he and I. Um, those are some great memories because I didn't really enjoy fishing.
Mhm.
Now, if I revisit it as an adult, maybe I will. But as a kid, it really isn't my thing. But hey, Dad, I want to go with you. I want to spend time with you, and we'd have good conversations. I have one more to qualify with that. But looking back on it, going out in a single engine boat 30 miles offshore was not exactly the best decision, hindsight. But I think as a kid, you don't think about that stuff. The other
No.
aspect of that was fishing in Lake Ontario. So we used to
Yeah.
tow the boat up there, summer trip, just he and I. Again, listening to the Beach Boys, Lake Ontario might as well be an ocean because you get out far enough, you can't see land. And it was a hot day, probably about 95 degrees. And we were just sweltering. And I'm like, man, what's the temperature of the water? He's like, it's like 75. Okay. I'm like, I'm just so hot. He's like, strip down and jump in, cool yourself off. I'm like, really? Yeah. Who's around? Who's going to see you? All right. So I did, jumped in, swam around for a bit. And I'm like, calling out to him, like, hey, just out of curiosity, what's the depth? He goes, and he
Mhm.
looks over at the thing. He goes, we're at 850 feet. I'm like, I'm coming in. I'm done.
That would have been my answer too. Yeah. Oh,
There's
yeah.
way too many bigger things down there that could, I'm like, that freaks me out. Nope.
Ooh, oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying. This one just popped in my head and
Yeah.
it's based off of something you said earlier, but I want you to think for about 7 seconds, maybe 10 seconds, however long it takes for you to think of a person that you haven't said I'm sorry to or want
Hmm.
to say I'm sorry to. And without, I mean, you can talk about that moment or simply say the words "I'm sorry" if you feel it. But I was
Gosh.
curious about that when you said that that may have been your answer to some of the hardest things to say.
Um, trying to think anybody comes to mind. I mean, I guess it would have to do with my dad and say that, in the last years of his life, I'm sorry I wasn't as available as I could have been because I lived in Vegas and he lived they were in Florida at the time. Actually, no, we had just moved to Nashville, so we were even closer. In the last days of his life, I was there by circumstance of him wanting to go on a trip to Alaska, and that's a whole separate story. But leading up to those, years that I could have probably made a bit more of an effort to be a part of his life or maybe call him more. That's what comes to mind, I guess. But I mean, saying sorry, I was talking about in the terms of even with a spouse, I try and challenge myself to beat her to the punch because she's world class at apologizing first.
Mhm,
And I tend to take a little bit longer
mhm.
until you let the conflict subside, so to speak. But she's really good at making that a quick thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, good.
Good question, though.
No, I appreciate that, I with I mean, you are a great conversationalist. I think I could be on here for the rest of the night, really. But I want to let you go. I want to be respectful of your time. But how can people get in touch with you? How can they support your mission and everything that you're doing?
Well, everything is at Jim McCarthy voiceovers.com or jmvos.com. The other website, if you're looking to get a podcast produced, is it'syourshow.co. So it's alliterative and it rhymes. But a lot of my socials will be at the Jim McCarthy voiceover site for sure if you want to follow along. And, as far as being encouraging to other people, those people that are on LinkedIn that aren't getting engagement that we all come across, leave a comment, leave a like. Let's start a movement, you
I
know?
love that. I
I
love that.
try to do that for people. If I believe in what they're doing, if it's a thoughtful comment, I'll leave it. I'll certainly give the thumbs up, just because, I wish more people would do that for me.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
might as well, be the example.
Wow. I love that. I love that. I'm gonna start doing that too. So thank you for that reminder.
Right.
Jim, with all the things that you can be doing and all the places that you could be, I appreciate you being here with me, embracing vulnerability.
Thanks for having me on, pal.
Thank you for joining us for another powerful episode of Vulnerability Muscle. I hope you found inspiration and valuable insights that resonate with you. If you're enjoying this journey of self discovery and empowerment, there are a few ways you can support the podcast. First, make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. If you've been moved by our conversations and the mission of redefining vulnerability, please consider leaving a review. Your feedback not only motivates us, but also helps others discover the podcast. Share your thoughts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in. And don't forget to spread the word. Follow us on Instagram at Vulnerability Muscle for updates, and you can connect with me personally at Reggie D. Ford on all platforms. Visit vulnerabilitymuscle.com for additional resources and upcoming episodes. And remember, embracing vulnerability is strength. Thanks for being a part of the journey. Until next time, stay empowered, stay vulnerable, and keep flexing that vulnerability muscle.